Here I'm going to go over some tips on how to start creating your comic strip. So just as a general tip, one of the first things you want to do is change the background. It's just going to make it look better. It's going to make it a little more appealing. And I'm just going to choose this kind of like medium blue right here. Okay. Now, from here, first thing you want to do is probably create some characters. Okay. So if you're looking at the slideshow of tips, make sure that you are choosing backgrounds that are transparent, shown here. Not here. It's just going to look a lot better if they're transparent. Okay. One way to test that is I'll just show you in a minute. Now, when you're scrolling through here, you can look for this slide that has a few websites that you can go to and just kind of search for the character that you think you want. So I want a little girl, and I'm going to choose this ballerina. Now what you want to do is download the size that you want. For the size that we're doing, generally I would choose medium. And I also want her to have a little friend, so I'm going to have a T-Rex. And I'm also going to download the medium size. Okay. Now, looking back at this, another tip that it gives is to offset the background with another color. So I'm actually going to work a little bit on this by just try to make the background a little more interesting. So I'm just going to create a large circle, and I'll make it usually another color of kind of the same shade, so maybe just a little bit of a lighter blue. Maybe one more. Okay, now with that, you see that line on the outside? I kind of want that to match, to be the same color. So if you just check, I say it's the second box down, so you want to make sure it matches. Okay. Now maybe I'll just kind of stretch this a little bit. Do the same thing here. Kind of move that around. And then also, I think I'm going to add some floor to my comic strip to make it look just a little more believable. And I'll do maybe it's kind of like a brown color, but this is one that I will give an outline to. Okay, so you can see it's kind of starting to take shape a little bit. Now, if you go into presentation mode, it won't have that the lines extending across the border. It will look nice and clean. Okay. So that's my background, and I'm just going to drag the pictures that I got earlier into the screen. Okay, so first I'm going to drag in my, I'm going to drag in my ballerina. Okay, now you can see she doesn't have a white background, it's transparent, which makes it look really nice. Size that down a little bit, and then I'm going to bring in the T-Rex. Same thing, transparent background. It doesn't have like a white box around it, which makes it look very nice. Okay. So they're my characters so far. Now the next thing I want to do with them is probably give them something to say, so I'm going to give them some speech bubbles. This tips strip has a few that you can choose, or you can just go from the menu, go insert, I'm sorry, not there, go to the shapes button, and in callouts you'll see a few different boxes here. When you choose one, then you can size it. Now I want this to be more towards her head, so I'm going to rotate this to flip it to make that match a little bit better. Just kind of size it until I feel like it's right. Now, just another little tip, if you click on something and press Command D is to clone it. Okay, and I'll rotate that, do the same thing, flip it back the other way. Now they both have speech bubbles. Now to give them something to say, you can just type in the speech bubble. So she's going to say, "Hey Teddy, what's up?" And I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to change the text or the font to something that looks a little bit more like a comic strip, change the size, and maybe I'll center the text inside the bubble. Now I can see you have this white space on the side, so I'll maybe size it down so it doesn't look Like there's so much blank space. And then I'll move that speech bubble till it's right there. And I'll do the same thing here. So just double click in there, he's going to say, and I'll do those same things. Generally watch the fonts to match each other just so it looks consistent. I'll make that centered, and maybe I'll stretch it out a little bit so it goes onto 2 rows instead of 3. I think that looks a little bit better. Okay. So just to see what that would look like in presentation mode. Okay. Looks pretty good, right? All right, so now I'm going to go into adding animations to kind of making the characters pop up. So think about who you want to show up first, and you want to do your animations in that order. Okay, so I want the ballerina to show up first. So I'm going to click the object, go to Insert, Animation. Okay, and right now it's on Fade In. Okay, so if you just want to see what that looks like, that's not really what I want. I don't want her to fade in. Okay. So instead of having her fade in, I probably want her to come into the screen, so to like fly in. So I think fly in from top might be good. And instead of doing it on click, I'm just going to click after previous, which for this one, since she's the first one, after previous means when someone goes to this slide, it'll automatically start. Okay. Then I'll have him come in next. And instead of him fading, maybe he'll fly in from the right side of the screen. So he'll fly in from the right. And I want to make sure that that's not on click, that's after previous. So let's take a preview of this real quick. So she flies in from the top and he flies in from the right. But their speech bubbles were there the whole time. Okay, so if you watch that again, I don't want their speech bubbles to show up before them. So first is the ballerina, then is a T-Rex, then is going to be what the ballerina says. So that'll pop in next. Now this is something that can fade in, that's fine. And then what he says, we'll add that last. Okay, so let's preview this. Okay, so right now it's still on click for the last 2 bubbles. So I kind of want those to show up automatically. So right, do you see how it says on click still? Let's change this to after previous, and we'll then make that one after previous. So one really important thing is you got to make sure these are in order. Okay, so it's ballerina comes in, T-Rex comes in, her bubble comes in, and then his bubble comes in. So we'll see what that looks like on its own. Okay, and that was all automatic, right? So now I'm just going to show you one thing is I'm going to add another slide and then we'll look at a transition. So I'm going to take a second to pause this and just create another slide. You already saw how to create it earlier with this one, so I'm just going to show you how to go from one slide to the next to kind of make it look like more of a comic strip. Okay, so I just made the second slide, so I'll just show you real quick right here. And just one thing to notice is that in the first frame, when we're meeting the characters, they're kind of small, but now it's just her talking, so I kind of zoomed into her or just made her, enlarged her, and then some of her body drops below the frame. But when you're looking at it in full screen, you won't be able to see the part that's cut off, which is what I want. So this is all coming automatically. And then I have to arrow key to the next slide, and it's just right there. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a transition from one slide to the next. One thing just to be aware of is whatever slide that you want to have a transition to, like the upcoming slide or the next slide, that's the one that you need to add the transition onto, okay? So right now I have the first slide selected. I want no transition for the first slide because this is the one that it just starts on. I'm going to add the transition to the second one, to the one that it's going into. So if I click transition, it's on no transition. I'm going to do this one, slide from the right. It's going to slide from this side, so it's going to go this direction, sliding from the right, which I feel like is going to be more like a comic strip kind of look. I'm not going to apply it to all slides. Well, that's what it is for right now, but because there's only one extra slide. But you can choose like apply it to only one slide or that kind of a thing. Okay, so for right now, I'll just kind of X that out, and we'll go back to the first slide and take a look at it full screen. So here come my characters, what they're saying, and then we have our nice slide transition to the next slide. Okay. I'm going to add one thing about adding another type of word here. So if we go to insert and do word art, it's going to give you this little box. And this is just going to give you another way to enter in text. Now you might have just a certain word that you really want to emphasize. So let's pretend he's going to say boom. Okay, so for right now it just looks like that. Now you can see that I can still choose a text, but there's no place to choose the fonts or the size of the text. That's because all you're going to do is move the box around. Where if you do that with other text, like if I have text and it just says the same thing, if I'm moving the box around, it just changes the size of the box, but it doesn't change the size of the text. Okay? You have to do that with manually with the number. With word art, however you drag it is what it turns it into. But I will change the font. And you can always add more fonts from wherever you are finding them on the Add More Fonts button at the bottom. But, maybe I'll go one more. How about that one? Okay. Now you can change the color. Maybe I'll make this kind of like a red with a black outline, and I'll make the outline a little bit thicker. And one more thing is maybe I'll put like a little background behind it. And I want to think about a color that would go nice with red in front of it, so maybe a bright yellow. I'll do the same thing with the outline, make it black, make that thicker. Now, one thing you need to know about is order of things. So right now the yellow splash is on top. I want the red boom to be on top, so I'm going to go to order. Remember, I have the red boom selected, so I want to bring that to the front. And there it is. And then I can group these two things together. So I'm just clicking one, pressing shift, and then clicking the next one. And then I two-finger click, and I'm going to click group. That's going to make them one, so I can size them together. So see, when I click it, it automatically gets both of them. And I'll go ahead and add a transition to this one. Okay, it's already there. But I want to take this off. I don't want him to fly in anymore. So it's just going to be sliding in from the right. So we'll start from the beginning and present. Here's our characters. Close-up of the ballerina. Close-up of T-Rex. Okay. So hopefully that gives you ideas about how to get started on your comic strip.